super chat. What's going on, Uber Eric? Thank you very much for the support. About to head to my weekly D&D session. Woolie, can you tell us about some of the characters you used to play? Reggie, have you ever dabbled with D&D or anything similar?
No, I have not. My closest experience with D&D was when we played Baldur's Gate 3. That's when I started like seeing like, oh, charisma and all these stats. Oh, that's how it works. You roll for it and you got checks. That was my first introduction to D&D. Yeah.
Okay. So my first character was Blaze. But it was like, I'm pretty sure I had a real name that was like a nickname on it. You know, I think I think our DM made us like have a real name, and then like that was kind of like a tag. But there was something. So what like what I remember. There's a lot that I forget, but what I do remember is I played a fighter mage, and he was really recommending against it because he's like, you've never played before, and hybrid characters are very difficult because you're not going to get the best of each class. You're going to get the weakest of both, and you have to use those efficiently, you know, in more difficult scenarios. So 2 sets of beginner's tools, you got to know what you're doing to thrive with them, as opposed to having low, mid, and high end, you know? But I was like, nah, but I was just too attached to the idea of like being able to cast like Flame Blade and do cool stuff, you know? It's like, well, you can do that if you are like a paladin that wants like a holy sword or something. It's like, no, I don't want to be a paladin. I want to be a magic user that can use weapons.
You want to be different.
Well, for me, I was like, I like the idea of like being my own Chrono Trigger double tech, you know? I like the idea of being like a fighter that can cast a little bit.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, I remember he's like, okay, well, so we can do that, but it's going to be tricky. And like, yeah, I had to like roll a bunch of extra stuff. I had a limit on like which stats I could choose and which abilities I could choose. There was a lot I couldn't do. And like stuff was more expensive for me for sure. But I played a character. I used a faux shard as a weapon. I had Melf's magic missiles. And I think I had like Melf's magic missiles and turn undead, I want to say. And I think that was like it. Whereas the rest of my team had like a lot more going on. And I remember at the time, I was like really into Dragonlance. So I thought like Raistlin Majeur was like the coolest mage ever. And I remember kind of wanting to play like a character that like could do or was kind of like that. But I was like, no, but I'm a fighter as well. So it's not really that energy. So you're not this kind of edgy mage dude, you know? And like he's only acting like he's this sickly old powerful mage, you know.
Okay.
And it's one of those bits where so many like standout characters in D&D, like there's Drizzt the night elf, you know, the dark elf or whatever, the drow, and like everyone wants to like basically make their own version of that, or everyone wants to make their own version of the, you know, the fellowship or like the titular characters, and he was one of those for sure. But in the end, I kind of was just like, well, I'm going to have this, like, again, kind of fighter that can cast a little bit. And, you know, didn't really do anything too unique, honestly, in that first game. And we didn't last long enough to really level up and get very strong anyway. I think we completed, like, maybe 2 quests or so. Got a couple levels out of it, but it wasn't much, you know? Yeah, my first character was a fighter mage, and all I really wanted to do was, again, just like light my weapon on fire and like do cool fucking flame blade shit.
Let's see.
That's it. That's all I'm about, you know. and that's about as much as I remember. Really, I don't really remember what my friends played, or we didn't.
Which
again,
campaign you did?
yeah, because it didn't last super duper long.
As with most D&D campaigns.
Yeah, there's some people that go for years though.
Yeah, the good ones.
You're right.
The people who show up and it sucks when it's canceled every week because half of the party can't make it.
But then you have the Dragonlance thing I was just describing. It's like an official D&D book, but the creators of that, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, were playing these characters for 10 years or whatever, and then just converted their campaigns into books.
Oh, okay.
And then the Disco Elysium world was also a game they created, where they said, what if we made a tabletop game, but it was full of politics and bullshit instead of just random races, and then they kind of started out with okay, orcs, but they've been gentrified out of their neighborhood and they don't have voting power anymore and they're fighting for their rights and or whatever. And then they kind of started doing that, and then they're okay, so they barely really look like that anymore, so these are now just gonna be people from Grad, or you're gonna have and all the races and stuff kind of started out. You can go back and listen to some of the interviews with the creators of Disco and stuff, but Martin Luigo is one of them, and he just described essentially they just wanted to make a what if they made their own fantasy setting, but it was again more political and full of all this crazy wild shit that was more exciting and interesting than just fantasy Tolkien.
Okay.
And reflective of hard times living in Estonia, yeah, and then you play that for a while and you get enough material to just turn into a book as well. That shit's pretty cool. Oh yeah, Cyberpunk, of course. The whole Johnny Silverhand and Morgan Blackhand stuff and everything. Yeah, tabletop.